and welcome back. This time we will be talking about everything that I read in the month of October. Now I did, I believe, mention this in my November TBR that it was a little bit of a slower month for me just because I had more planned and didn't quite get to it all. I'm kind of going through this thing right now where I keep picking up books and not necessarily wanting to finish them right away. It's not quite a slump, but I'm also apparently having the same issue with gaming right now where I just scrolling through my Steam library and can't decide what to play. So in a weird spot right now. I think moving forwards, I am quite behind on book reviews. Two Dresden books, a Game of Thrones. I'm probably not going to review. I'll get to why in just a moment. Memory of Light, I do a review to that. I do at least want to wrap up my Dresden reviews and my Wheel of Time review, and then potentially do some like series style videos as opposed to just continuing reviews of everything. I don't think I'm going to be necessarily reviewing every book that I read anymore. I'll probably be a little bit more selective and try to branch out and do some other things simply because just doing mostly reviews was getting a little bit redundant, I guess, for me, and I was kind of losing the drive to just keep doing it. So if something really sticks with me or it's, the first of a series, I may start doing for longer series, maybe every couple of books, talk about them, as a group, or I'm doing a lot more collaborations, live chats, things like that. So I think a good majority of my reviews will switch to that style just because it's a little bit more fun to just kind of talk with other people, in a live setting, which I'll go ahead and talk about the first thing, which is, this wasn't actually the first book that I finished. It was A Memory of Light, but A Game of Thrones was a reread, and Liene, myself, and Jimmy, channels linked below, had a 3-hour live stream for that book, just talking about A Game of Thrones, talking a little bit about the show, talking a little bit about the series. Those chats are always going to be spoiler filled. The books have been out forever. We are all doing a reread for them, basically everything, including A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and Fire and Blood, just going through everything that George R. R. Martin has written. But this reread was fantastic. I absolutely loved coming back to this book. And as we said in our live chat, there's so much in this book that I honestly forgot was in this book. A lot of the series has just kind of bled together for me, especially with watching the show, because there's some things that happen later in the show that you actually get in this book, whether through like flashbacks or visions, things like that. And it's super cool to come back to this and see just how much was actually given to you in book one. So much foreshadowing, so much setup, so many things that we may never see a payoff to, but it was excellent to see it in this book again. The drinks were flowing, many whiskeys were had. My 31-year-old body apparently can't drink anymore because I was pretty much screwed for the entirety of the next day after that. But I love coming back to A Game of Thrones, and I'm excited to continue with my reread of A Song of Ice and Fire because it is one of the best fantasy series ever written, even if it's never finished. Now, the first book that I actually finished was A Memory of Light, which is definitely one of, if not, I don't know if it's my favorite Wheel of Time book. There is so much in this book, though, that was fantastic. Obviously, the last battle being the last battle, the culmination of the series. I think Sanderson did a fantastic job wrapping up the series, and that's a hell of a task to take on, to tackle the Wheel of Time and just be able to bring it home and generally please, I think, Wheel of Time fans. It was overall, I love this series. Yes, I hate the slog. Yes, I wish it was shorter, and I feel like books 8 to 10 could be condensed to one book, but I'm not here to edit the series. There is far more good than bad in the series, even with nitpicky things or, tendencies that the writers had throughout the books, making certain characters annoying, the whole gender dynamics of, women think all men are stupid, all men think women are crazy. That doesn't go away in the series, but my negatives of these books are nothing compared to everything else. All the greatness of these books really shines through. And A Memory of Light was a great, triumphant last book. We do lose some characters, obviously, throughout the way in this series, and they're all felt for the most part. Certain ones really did hit me harder than I expected, honestly, when we finally got to it. I think the majority of the cast got a great send-off. I loved most of the character arcs. I think they were done very, very well. Especially the main ones that I care about, like the main cast, as I like to say in all my reviews. I think it wrapped up very, very well. And, hats off to Robert Jordan for creating The Wheel of Time. Hats off to Brandon Sanderson for finishing The Wheel of Time. I don't know how much of RJ was put into these last books. I'm sure there were plenty of thoughts and notes and outlines for Sanderson to go off of, but I mean, just it's just one hell of a series. And I think most fantasy readers will enjoy it. It's a lot to soak in. It's definitely one of those things that you can go back to time and time again. I probably won't, just because it's very long. But I could definitely understand why so many people go back to it year after year and just find new details, because, I mean, there's so much that I missed. There's so many things that were foreshadowed in book 1 for book 14. There's just a crazy amount of detail and focus on the story that was being told here. It is truly epic in every sense of the word, and it's a fantastic fantasy series that, again, I think most people would enjoy. I know there are some out there that just can't get into the writing style. They get bogged down with the amount of characters. There's a lot. Or the detail and time spent on describing clothing and settings and things like that. But that's just the style of writing that RJ liked, and that's what Sanderson carried on through the end. Obviously, I think Sanderson's a little bit better at pacing than Robert Jordan was, but overall, fantastic series. I loved the ending. I loved the last battle. And yeah, Wheel of Time was great. Next up, Dune Messiah. So this is another one that I'm not going to do a spoiler-free review of or anything, because we do have a live chat coming up on Evie's channel, I think is where we're having it. There's a bunch of us that are going to talk about the rest of the Dune saga as we read them. So I'm reading Children of Dune right now, and Dune Messiah it effectively functions as a long part 4 almost to Dune, because Dune is broken up into books 1, 2, and 3. It's essentially parts of the book. So this I would consider a long part 4 to the Dune original book. It definitely finishes that story, because you kind of get a quick wrap up in book 3 of Dune. The ending can feel a little bit rushed. There's a lot going on that suddenly sort of just closes, and not every door is closed. This does a good job of wrapping up some of that and sort of just continuing that book, almost like a long epilogue in a way. And I definitely don't like it as much as Dune. I think Dune is a fantastic standalone book, and really is, I mean, so far from what I've read of Dune Messiah and Children of Dune, Dune is the pinnacle of Dune, and everything is going to kind of take a step down from there. They're getting a little bit more into... These books seem to get a little bit more into the political and philosophical discussions, even beyond what Dune was, because Dune had that, but it also had, the ecology of Dune. It had the mystery of the Bene Gesserit, and learning about the Fremen, and this whole battle of Paul, and the Emperor, and just the planet of Arrakis, and dealing with the sandworms. And there was so much happening in this, and so many cool aspects to it, while following that hero's journey, chosen one, whatever you want to label it as. It just had all of that in such a great culmination of what creates Dune. And then Dune Messiah is a little bit more straightforward. It takes a much more direct approach to its storytelling. The writing feels very different. The scope is a lot smaller, and that sort of continues into Children of Dune, which, I mean, I'll talk about that later when I get to it. But it just seems like books 2 through 6 are just going to feel like their own sequel. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They feel like their own series, and Dune was the standalone, and these just kind of branched off as opposed to like a continuation of the same kind of writing style and feel. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but it's not like when you go into Wheel of Time and like book to book, like it feels like the Wheel of Time, or you're reading through Faithful and the Fallen. Each book kind of feels like each other. This series was really just like Dune is its own thing, and then Dune Messiah through Chapter House Dune feel like its own thing. It's not entirely connected. It's weird. They're very different. It's getting a little bit weirder as we go on. I'm hearing that God Emperor is when the weird really kicks up to 11, so we'll see when we get there. But so far, so good. They're just, if you go into the sequels expecting Dune, you're not going to get it. They are different. They kind of stand on their own legs, and we'll see where we go from there. And the last book that I finished up in October was The Martian by Andy Weir. I, of course, only knew this from the movie because I wasn't really reading much at the time when I saw the movie. It's been a while. I've talked about this a bunch of me coming back to reading. But I really enjoyed it. It's definitely very similar to the movie in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways it's different because obviously book to screen adaptation, there's going to be differences made, changes made for adapting it to screen. I loved Matt Damon playing Mark Watney in the movie. I think the movie was well done. Matt Damon really carries the film in his, part of Mark Watney. And I did a little bit of mixed reading and audiobook. Everybody said the audiobook was great with Will Wheaton narrating, and I think for the most part he did a pretty good job. Watney's character is a little bit annoying at times in this book. I loved when he was talking about the scientific aspect and really thinking through the logic and the math and the science of how to survive on Mars. Tons of this book is him sort of like monologuing to himself, going through equations, trying to figure out, how much soil he needs, how much water he needs, how much helium he needs, just going through the rationale of like, okay, how am I going to survive for X amount of days? If I ration, I can survive this much longer. All of that was really cool. I think his comedic prowess is lacking because there were so many kind of cringy jokes in this book that he makes that the comedy didn't hit it for me. I didn't think he was very funny. But I love the whole premise of being stranded on Mars and sort of forgotten about and just having to survive. And I think Andy Weir did a fantastic job of, and it seems like did a lot of research. I'm not going to question the science in the book. It sounded real enough to me. I'm sure he thought a lot of this through or, got help from people that he knows. It seemed pretty accurate, just from what a human could survive and how things function. I think overall, just they made a very realistic story here of surviving on Mars for however long it was. I don't remember. They're counting different on Mars. But overall, I really liked it. It's a totally different sci-fi than I've read in a long time, just because I've read a lot of space operas, and this was more of just, a survival story of a guy on Mars and how the hell is he going to get off the planet. So really well done. I highly recommend the book and the movie. I do want to read Project Hail Mary here shortly as well, so I'm pretty sure that's going to get recommended as a Patreon pick here shortly now that I finally read The Martian. But yeah, overall, nothing too negative to say about that one. I like it a lot. I may do a standalone review for that here shortly and then maybe talk about the movie. Who knows? We'll see. But the main reason that I only got to 4 books this month, of course, was because, like I said, I wasn't really feeling as many books, and I ended up like binging all of Squid Game, which I don't usually talk about, like shows and movies that I watch while I'm on here, but watched all of Squid Game. I recommend that show. That was great. It's on Netflix. It was 9 episodes, I believe, and all but one of them were pretty great. I know some people don't like the ending. I thought it was fine. There is one shorter episode because they're all about an hour long. There was a 35-minute episode. It's called VIPs. It's the worst episode that's in the show. Deal with it. But the show was pretty cool. I liked it overall. And then I spent like a day and a half watching that instead of reading anything. And then of course I did see Dune. So that was a cinematic masterpiece in my opinion. I have a review up on the channel for it. I thought it was brilliant. Definitely see it on the big screen if you haven't. And before it leaves theaters, it was definitely worth the ticket price going to a big theater to see that on screen. And we already have a part 2 greenlit, so that's exciting. And it kind of sounds like Denis Villeneuve wants to do a part 3, which I assume is just going to be Dune Messiah. So, I mean, that one doesn't get that weird yet, so I could absolutely see a part 3 happening, since part 2 is going to be a full in-theater only release, I believe. And the numbers are probably going to blow part 1 out of the water, since that was a dual release with HBO Max. But definitely looking forward to part 2 in a couple years, and then it sounds like we're going to get a part 3. So super exciting there. I love Dune, and getting to see it all adapted on big screen in the way that it has been is great. It is a little bit sad. The more seemingly cut content that we keep getting glimpses of online channels on YouTube and Reddit and things like that are finding screenshots or scenes that have been cut that just didn't make it in the movie, and it sucks because almost all of them were things that I really, really wish were in the movie. So unfortunate that happens. Hopefully we get some kind of director's cut or just, uncut version at some point that we can just watch these scenes, because, I mean, there's some things that got cut that I don't think should have, but I still think it was great overall. So that was my October, and on to November. See you guys.